The chandelier above the lobby glowed like a golden crown, casting its light over marble floors polished so brightly they mirrored every step. The Grand Orion Hotel was the kind of place where power whispered in every corner, where luxury was not just promised but demanded. It was not a place for hesitation, it was a place for legacy. And yet, on that evening, legacy itself was put on trial. Vanessa Carter walked into the lobby with the grace of someone who had built empires from the ground up. Her dark blazer carried the quiet weight of authority, her heels struck the marble like a drumbeat of confidence, and in her eyes glimmered the fire of generations, her grandmother who had marched in Selma, her father who had fought to open doors that had been locked shut. But the door she entered that night would become a battlefield. "Excuse me, ma'am," the manager's voice cut through the air like broken glass. His name tag read Richard Blake, and his crisp suit seemed to carry the arrogance of someone who mistook wealth for worth. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path to the elevators. His lips curled in a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "This section is for guests only. I'll have to ask you to leave." The words dropped heavy in the room. A few guests turned their heads, curious, others lowered their eyes, uncomfortable. Vanessa froze, not because she doubted herself, but because she knew exactly what was happening. She had seen that look before, in boardrooms, in banks, in airports. The same presumption, the same dismissal, dressed in false politeness but rooted in something far uglier. Her voice, steady but edged with steel, answered, "I am a guest." Blake laughed, not with humor, but with disbelief. "Highly unlikely. Perhaps you're lost. The convention center is down the street. This is not the place for," he paused, his eyes sweeping over her like she was less than the marble under his shoes. "People like you." The words cracked like a whip across the lobby. A silence followed, thick and suffocating. Even the fountain in the center of the lobby seemed to hush. A bellhop froze mid-step, an elderly couple clutched their pearls tighter, and a young woman with her phone raised ever so slightly pressed record. Have you ever been judged before your truth could shine? Have you ever walked into a room knowing you belonged, only to be told, with a smile, that you did not? That was the fire burning behind Vanessa's calm stare. Blake crossed his arms, as if sealing the matter. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave, ma'am. If you don't comply, I'll call security." Vanessa took a breath, the kind of breath that carried generations. She thought of her grandmother humming "We Shall Overcome" while ironing Sunday clothes. She thought of her father, who once told her, "Baby girl, when they tell you no, make sure you own the building where they said it." And she thought of the irony, the cruel, burning irony, that the man standing before her had no idea she already did. But she didn't reveal it. Not yet. Because sometimes, truth must wait until the stage is set, until the lesson will sting so deeply it cannot be forgotten. The lobby was watching now. Every pair of eyes, every phone, every heart beat faster as the tension thickened. The moment had shifted from inconvenience to confrontation. Blake signaled to the security desk. Two guards began walking toward them, their footsteps echoing in the marble hall. Vanessa didn't flinch. Her hands rested calmly at her side, but her silence screamed louder than any protest. And then the manager delivered the final insult, the one that turned the air electric. "People like you should remember your place. This hotel represents excellence, and you simply don't belong." Gasps rose from the crowd. Phones were lifted higher. The young woman recording mouthed a single word to her friend beside her, "Viral." The guards stepped closer. Vanessa's chin lifted, her eyes unyielding, her voice steady as scripture. "My place," she said softly, almost like a hymn. "Let's see about that." The first crack of the storm had arrived, and no one in the Grand Orion knew how hard the rain was about to fall. The security guards moved in with heavy steps, their black shoes clicking against the polished marble like a drumbeat of intimidation. The crowd, sensing something bigger than a routine confrontation, edged closer. Phones tilted higher. The lobby, usually filled with the soft hum of violins and the polite chatter of wealthy travelers, now throbbed with unease. Vanessa stood her ground. Her voice was calm, her posture unshaken. But inside, a storm brewed. "Ma'am, please don't make this harder than it needs to be," one guard said, his tone clipped, rehearsed, the way men speak when they've already decided who you are and what you deserve. Vanessa's eyes flicked to his name tag, D. Harris. She held his gaze for a long moment, as if reminding him he was looking at more than just a guest. He shifted under her stare. But Manager Blake had no such hesitation. He stepped forward, emboldened by the authority of his title. His voice, sharp and arrogant, carried across the lobby. "She's trespassing. Escort her out immediately." The words landed like stones thrown into a still pond. The ripples spread, gasps, murmurs, the faint sound of someone whispering, "Is he serious?" And then it came, the laugh. A cruel, dismissive chuckle that dripped with the venom of superiority. "You're really wasting my time, ma'am. You think you belong in a place like this? Look around you." Vanessa did look. She saw polished suits, silk dresses, the kind of wealth that strutted instead of walked. She saw the glint of champagne glasses in the bar and the glitter of diamonds on wrists. But she also saw something else, eyes that were watching, questioning, recording. Witnesses. She thought of her mother's voice, tender but unyielding, "They'll try to strip your dignity in front of others, baby. Don't let them succeed. Stand tall, no matter what." "Sir," Vanessa began, her voice calm but edged with iron, "I have every right to be here." Blake scoffed loudly, rolling his eyes toward the crowd as if inviting them in on his mockery. "Every right? What could possibly give you the right? You don't have the reservation, you don't have the look, and frankly," he leaned in, his tone dropping into a whisper that wasn't quiet enough. "You don't have the pedigree." The word sliced through the room like a blade. A gasp rose from the young woman recording, and her phone caught the moment perfectly. Pedigree. A word soaked in centuries of exclusion, of gates slammed shut, of clubs that didn't admit people like her. Vanessa didn't move. Didn't flinch. Her silence was its own defiance. But the crowd did. An older black man in a brown fedora stepped forward, his voice steady. "She told you she's a guest. You ought to let the lady prove it before you embarrass yourself further." Blake turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "Oh, it concerns me," the man said firmly. "Because I've lived long enough to see this scene play out too many times. And every time, it's the same. A black woman told she doesn't belong. A black man told to stay quiet. Well, not today." The lobby erupted in murmurs. Some guests shook their heads at the confrontation, others nodded silently, their sympathy leaning toward Vanessa. But Blake only sneered. "Security, do your job. Now." The guards hesitated. Harris glanced at Vanessa again, unease flickering in his eyes. But orders were orders, and they reached for her arms. The crowd gasped. Phones zoomed closer. The air tightened with tension so thick it could be cut. "Don't touch me," Vanessa said softly, but the steel in her voice froze the guards mid-motion. Blake's face reddened. "You're making a scene, and I will not allow this in my hotel." His hotel. The irony nearly made Vanessa laugh. But instead, she stood taller, her chin lifted, her voice carrying across the room with the kind of strength that silences violins and drowns champagne bubbles. "You think you can decide who belongs here? You think you can strip me of my dignity in front of all these people? Let me be clear," she paused, the silence hanging heavy. "The only thing you're proving is your own ignorance." The crowd stirred. Someone clapped softly, defiantly. Blake's jaw tightened. "Ignorance? You'll regret that comment when security escorts you out. This is my final warning." The moment balanced on a knife's edge. The guards, caught between obedience and doubt, hesitated again. The guests leaned forward, eager, anxious. Phones trembled in eager hands. And then, Blake pointed toward the door, his voice booming like a gavel. "Show her the door." The words rang through the lobby, echoing off marble and crystal. And just like that, Vanessa Carter, owner of the Grand Orion Hotel, stood one step away from the ultimate humiliation in her own empire. But she wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The guards stepped closer, their broad shoulders casting long shadows across the marble floor. The chandelier's glow caught the polished brass buttons of their jackets, and for a brief moment, it felt less like a luxury hotel and more like a courtroom, where Vanessa Carter stood accused of a crime she hadn't committed. Except this wasn't a courtroom. There was no judge, no jury, only a crowd hungry for spectacle, a manager drunk on authority, and a woman fighting to keep her dignity intact. "Ma'am," one of the guards said again, his voice quieter this time, uncertain. "Please, just come with us. Don't make this harder." Vanessa's eyes swept across the room. She saw the guests whispering behind crystal glasses, the raised eyebrows of wealthy patrons who enjoyed watching humiliation as if it were entertainment. She saw the cell phones, dozens now, glowing like fireflies, capturing every cruel second. She even saw a teenage girl, her braids tied with red ribbons, whispering to her mother, "Mama, why are they doing this to her?" Her mother hushed her, but the question hung in the air like a hymn unsung. Blake thrived on it. He straightened his tie, puffed his chest, and smiled at the crowd like an actor stepping into the spotlight. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "this establishment prides itself on exclusivity. Standards must be maintained. And when individuals attempt to deceive their way into spaces above their station, well, it is our duty to correct it. Above their station." The words dropped like stones, heavy with centuries of venom. The crowd reacted instantly. A murmur rippled through them, a mix of shock and disbelief. The fedora-wearing elder shook his head slowly, muttering, "Lord, not again. Not in this day and age." Vanessa inhaled deeply, every breath pulling her back through time. Back to the stories her grandmother told of separate water fountains and back doors. Back to her father's face when he was denied a loan, despite perfect credit, because men like him couldn't be trusted with that kind of money. And now here she was, decades later, in a hotel she had built from the ground up, standing in front of men who dared to say she was beneath the standard. The rage threatened to boil over, but she held it tight. Not yet. The humiliation deepened. Blake stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not enough to escape the microphones of a dozen recording phones. "You see, Miss Carter, or whatever your name is, you don't belong here. And the more you fight it, the worse it looks. Accept your place." Vanessa tilted her head, studying him like a professor studying a foolish student. Her silence unsettled him, but he masked it with a smirk. The teenage girl with red ribbons raised her phone higher now, whispering, "I'm live streaming this." Within seconds, comments flooded her screen. "This is unbelievable. What's her story? Why is he treating her like that?" The video count climbed, hundreds, then thousands. The lobby transformed. No longer just marble and chandeliers, it became a theater of injustice broadcast to the world. One woman in a crimson dress tried to intervene. "Mr. Blake, please, this is unseemly." Maybe she. But Blake silenced her with a wave of his hand. "Stay out of this, ma'am. We have procedures. And procedure demands she leave now." His arrogance fueled the fire. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice low but resonant, carrying across the crowd. "Procedure?" She let the word hang, dripping with disbelief. "Your procedure allows you to insult, demean, and humiliate without evidence. Your procedure allows you to strip a woman of her dignity in front of strangers." Blake chuckled, though the sound faltered under the weight of her words. "Spare me the speech. You're wasting everyone's time." "Wasting time?" Vanessa's eyes flashed. "The only thing being wasted here is the truth." The crowd stirred. Someone clapped again, louder this time. The fedora-wearing elder muttered, "Tell it, sister." Blake's face hardened. "Enough. Security, remove her." The guards hesitated, torn between orders and the quiet authority radiating from Vanessa. Phones zoomed in. The teenager's live stream ticked past 10,000 viewers, comments streaming in like a flood. "Don't let them do this to her. She looks like a queen. Stand strong, sister." The guards reached out again, gently this time, as if aware that history had just entered the room. And then, Blake made the fatal mistake. He raised his hand. Not to strike, not fully, but to gesture with such dismissive aggression that it resembled a slap. The crowd gasped, a collective inhale that sucked the air from the chandelier-lit ceiling. It wasn't contact. But the image was enough. A white manager raising his hand toward a black woman who had done nothing wrong. Phones caught it. Cameras froze the moment. The live stream exploded past 20,000 viewers. Vanessa didn't flinch. She simply locked eyes with him, her voice calm, cold, devastating. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. The room fell silent, the only sound the faint ding of an elevator arriving somewhere in the distance. The humiliation had peaked. The crowd leaned in, hungry for what came next. And in 9 minutes, the world would know the truth. The silence after her words was so sharp, it felt like glass about to shatter. Blake's hand hung frozen in midair, the dismissive gesture now etched into the minds of everyone in the lobby, and immortalized on 1,000 screens streaming live across the internet. The guards dropped their hands, unsure whether to obey his order or follow the instinct that told them they were standing on the edge of disaster. The teenage girl with the red ribbons whispered breathlessly into her phone, "Y'all, this is blowing up, 25,000 people are watching right now, no, wait, 30. Blake's arrogance faltered, but only for a second. He straightened his jacket and scoffed. Big mistake. Please. The only mistake here was letting you walk into this hotel in the first place. I told you, standards must be maintained. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in outrage, others looked away in discomfort. But no one moved. Everyone wanted to see what this woman, this mysterious guest, would do next. Vanessa's gaze swept over the crowd, steady, unwavering. She thought of her grandmother's voice, soft and strong at the same time, "Baby, when they try to strip you down, that's when you stand taller than ever." And so she did. With deliberate calm, she reached into her leather bag. The guard stiffened, instinctively tense, but she raised her other hand in a gesture of assurance. "I'm reaching for my identification. Watch carefully. Every move I make will be in the light." The crowd leaned forward. Blake chuckled nervously, mistaking her composure for desperation. "Go ahead. Show us your fake ID, your little charade. It won't change anything." But when Vanessa opened the portfolio, silence fell again. Nestled inside, gleaming under the golden chandelier, was a stack of embossed documents bearing the official seal of the Carter Group International. Contracts. Deeds. Ownership papers. And on top of them all, a card, heavy and unmistakable, embossed in gold, "Vanessa Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Carter Group Hotels and Resorts." Blake's smirk crumbled. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The color drained from his face like sand slipping through an hourglass. Vanessa held the card high enough for the nearest phones to capture. The seal glinted under the chandelier, unmistakable, irrefutable. "My name," she said, her voice steady, deep with quiet authority, "is Vanessa Carter. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Carter Group International. And this," she spread her hand, sweeping across the marble, the chandelier, the velvet drapes, "is my hotel." Gasps rippled like a wave through the crowd. One woman clutched her pearls. The elder in the fedora closed his eyes and whispered, "Glory." The teenager with red ribbons nearly dropped her phone. "Oh my God, y'all, she OWNS this place." Phones erupted with comments, the live stream counter blasting past 50,000. "This is wild. He tried to throw the owner out. This is history right here." Blake stumbled back a step, shaking his head. This is some kind of trick." "Trick?" Vanessa's tone sharpened, every syllable slicing through the tension like a blade. "The only trick here is how you managed to keep your job this long, treating guests like trash while standing in my lobby." The guards looked at each other, visibly shaken. One lowered his head respectfully. The other whispered, "Ma'am. Your Honor, no. Your CEO," and trailed off, unsure what title fit the gravity of the moment. Vanessa closed the portfolio slowly, deliberately. "You called me a liar. You humiliated me in front of strangers. You raised your hand against me in my house. And now the whole world has seen it. She stepped closer to Blake, her heels clicking against the marble like a judge's gavel striking wood. The crowd parted, silent, reverent. You didn't just disrespect me, she continued, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. You disrespected the staff who serve this hotel with dignity. You disrespected the community that built me. You disrespected justice itself. The elder man's eyes filled with tears. Tell it, child, he murmured, almost like a prayer. Blake stammered. Please, Ms. Carter, I didn't know, I swear, if I'd known. That's the problem, Vanessa cut in, her voice unwavering. You shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me with respect. Respect isn't a privilege reserved for the wealthy, it's a right owed to every soul who walks through these doors. Phones zoomed in on her face, capturing the fire in her eyes, the steel in her posture. Already, hashtags were exploding online. Hashtag Carter Hotel Scandal. Hashtag Vanessa Carter. Hashtag Respect is a right. And still, she wasn't finished. Because Vanessa Carter never left a wound without opening the infection beneath. She was about to expose the rot at the core of Blake's arrogance, the systemic rot that stretched far beyond one hotel manager. And when she did, there would be no denying it. The truth had emerged. But the reckoning was only beginning. The lobby, moments ago a stage for humiliation, had become a courtroom without walls. Every eye fixed on Vanessa, every phone raised like a witness, recording history as it unfolded. Blake's face twitched as he tried to salvage authority, but the ground beneath him had collapsed. His words tumbled out weak, broken. Ms. Carter, please, I didn't know. You must understand. Vanessa raised her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. The motion was quiet, regal, yet it carried more power than any outburst could. No, Mr. Blake, she said firmly, her voice resonating across marble and velvet, you will listen. The crowd hushed again. Even the champagne glasses stopped clinking. The silence became its own kind of choir, carrying her words like hymns in a sanctuary. You claim this was a mistake. But what you did to me tonight was not born from confusion, it was born from a system. Her eyes swept across the room, piercing not just Blake but every guest, every staff member, every watching stranger on the live stream. A system that has tolerated arrogance, encouraged disrespect, and excused discrimination for far too long. Gasps rippled again. Blake stammered. System? No, it was just. Just what? Vanessa's tone sharpened. Just following protocol. Just doing your job. That excuse has been sung too many times. I've heard it in courtrooms. I've seen it in boardrooms. I've watched men in your position hide behind it, as though prejudice dressed in a uniform somehow becomes professionalism. She opened her portfolio again, flipping through neatly stacked documents until she pulled out a thick blue folder. She held it high, letting the cameras catch the bold letters across the front, guest complaints, Carter Grand Hotel, downtown branch. Do you see this? Her voice rose now, commanding, like a preacher in the pulpit. This is 2 years of ignored complaints. Guests reporting mistreatment. Staff begging for fair treatment. Customers describing how they were belittled, overcharged, even barred from services, most of them Black, Latino, or immigrants. And every one of these complaints passed through your office, Mr. Blake. Blake's face went pale. His lips parted, but no defense came. Vanessa continued, unwavering. You didn't just humiliate me tonight. You humiliated this entire community, again and again, every time you let bias dictate service. Every time you silenced a staff member. Every time you turned a complaint into shredded paper. The elder in the fedora shouted, "Tell the truth, baby." The crowd erupted into murmurs of agreement, their voices blending like the rising hum of a choir. Vanessa pulled another paper free, a printed chart. She held it out so the press cameras could zoom in. Here are the statistics. In the past year, Black guests were accidentally overcharged 43% more often than white guests. Complaints from minority customers were dismissed nearly 60% of the time. Promotions for staff of color. Less than 12%. This is not coincidence. This is systemic. Phones buzzed. Viewers typed furiously. This is bigger than one manager. Expose it all. We're watching history right now. Blake's voice cracked. Those numbers, they're exaggerated. Exaggerated? Vanessa thundered, her voice echoing like a gospel choir hitting its peak. I chair the Carter Group's oversight committee. I've read every line. These are your numbers, Mr. Blake. Signed by your hand. Do you deny your own reports? His shoulders slumped. For the first time, he had no words. The teenage girl with red ribbons raised her voice from the corner. Ms. Carter. The live stream set 75,000 people. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, everybody's talking about this right now. The crowd gasped again. The story wasn't local anymore. It was viral. And Vanessa knew exactly what that meant. This, she said, her tone slowing, deliberate, heavy, is bigger than me. Bigger than you. This is about every person who has walked into a place they had every right to belong, only to be told they didn't measure up. About every elder who was turned away. About every young man followed by security for browsing too long. About every woman looked up and down before being dismissed as less than. Her words carried weight not just for those in the lobby, but for every viewer across the globe. Tears welled in eyes. Fists clenched in solidarity. A wave of murmurs rose again, this time stronger, angrier, united. Vanessa leaned forward, eyes locked on Blake. The world is watching now. And tonight, Mr. Blake, you are not on trial alone. The system you represent is on trial with you. The elder clapped once, sharp and loud. Others followed. Soon the lobby shook with applause, with voices raised, with chants beginning to form, justice. 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 And yet, amidst the roar, Vanessa's voice cut through once more, steady as iron. What happens next will not just change your life, Mr. Blake. It will change this hotel. This city. And maybe, if the world has courage enough, much more than that. The live stream counter blinked again, 95,000 viewers. The scandal had exploded. But Vanessa wasn't done. She had revealed the rot. Now, she would rally the community to demand change. The chants filled the hotel lobby like a thunderstorm that refused to be silenced. Justice. 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 The sound rolled against the marble walls, climbed the chandelier, and spilled out the glass doors into the night streets. For years, this lobby had been a shrine to wealth and power, where golden accents sparkled and violins played softly to entertain the elite. But tonight, it had become a sanctuary of truth, where ordinary voices carried the force of an entire people. Vanessa stood at the center of it all, shoulders back, robe of dignity brighter than any silk gown in the room. She could feel it, the weight of history pressing against her, and the strength of generations rising within her. Listen, she called out, raising her hand. The chant subsided, the energy condensed into breathless silence. Tonight is not just about me. It's about us. Her voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from the swell of emotion she had carried too long. She turned toward the elder in the fedora. Sir, you said you marched with Dr. King. The man nodded, his eyes glistening. Selma, 1965. I still remember the bridge, the tear gas, the dogs. His voice trembled, but his spirit stood tall. I marched for a future where my children wouldn't be humiliated like we were. Vanessa reached for his hand. And yet here you stand, in 2024, still watching the same humiliation unfold. But tonight, we break the cycle. Tonight, our voices rise together. Applause erupted, but before it could swell into another chant, the teenage girl with red ribbons shouted, Ms. Carter. The live stream just passed 100,000 viewers. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, it's everywhere. Gasps, followed by cheers. The moment wasn't confined to the gilded walls anymore. It belonged to the world. Vanessa drew a long breath. Then let the world hear us, she said, her voice rising like a hymn. Because when one of us is disrespected, all of us are disrespected. And when one of us stands, all of us must rise. The elder lifted his other hand skyward. Lord, let justice roll like waters. His words cracked with age but carried the resonance of church choirs and sermons long remembered. From somewhere in the crowd, soft humming began. A woman's voice, trembling but sure. The tune was unmistakable, "We shall overcome." Another voice joined. Then another. Soon, the entire lobby was filled with the song, rising in harmony, echoing against marble and glass. Tears welled in eyes, young and old, rich and poor, black and white alike. Guests who had once been bystanders now raised their voices too, caught in the gravity of history unfolding in real time. Vanessa closed her eyes for a moment, the sound washing over her like the tide. She thought of her grandmother, who had cleaned hotel floors so others could sleep in soft beds. She thought of her father, who had worked 3 jobs to buy his first share in the Carter Group. And she thought of every ancestor who had dreamed of this exact moment, when silence broke and voices filled the night. The gospel-like chorus gave her strength. When she spoke again, her words soared above the melody. Tonight, we declare that dignity cannot be denied. That prejudice will no longer hide behind uniforms and titles. That justice is not just a courtroom word, it is the breath we demand with every step, every song, every stand. The teenage girl lifted her phone high, her voice trembling with awe. They're calling this the Carter Hotel Uprising. People are saying this is history in the making. Vanessa nodded, her eyes sharp, her voice steady. History has always been made by ordinary people standing in extraordinary courage. And tonight, you are those people. The crowd roared, voices surging again, unified. Her stand is our stand, shouted a young man from the back. Her fight is our fight, echoed another. The chant grew, stronger, deeper, shaking the ground beneath them. Vanessa knew what came next. It wasn't enough to expose the system. It wasn't enough to chant and sing. They had to act. She lifted her portfolio high once more, pages fluttering like banners. 9 minutes ago, you tried to throw me out of this hotel. 9 minutes ago, you thought I didn't belong. But I belong here more than anyone in this room, and tonight, I take back what is mine, not just for me, but for every one of you. The lobby erupted. The live stream ticked upward. 120,000. 130. But Vanessa wasn't finished. Not yet. Because the next words she spoke would not just echo in that lobby. They would ripple across industries, across boardrooms, across nations. And they would deliver a lesson no one would ever forget: the lobby was no longer a hotel. It was a courtroom, a church, a battlefield, and a sanctuary all at once. The chandelier glistened above like a witness to history, while the crowd stood hushed, waiting for Vanessa Carter's final word. She drew in a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the moment beating in her chest. Then, in a voice steady and unshakable, she spoke. Every brick of this building was paid for by the Carter family. Every chair, every chandelier, every paycheck, it all exists because of the vision and sacrifice of my parents and grandparents. And yet tonight, I, the CEO of this company, was treated as if I were a trespasser. Not because of my credentials, not because of my record, but because of the color of my skin. A murmur rippled through the lobby. Even the security guards who had tried to escort her out looked down, shame heavy on their faces. Vanessa's hand trembled slightly as she lifted a sealed envelope from her portfolio. She held it high, so the live stream camera and every eye in the room could see. This, she declared, is the power of truth. This document is an immediate executive order, effective tonight. Every single staff member who participated in, condoned, or ignored this act of discrimination is hereby terminated. Effective immediately. Gasps exploded across the room. The lobby manager, pale as marble, staggered back as though struck by lightning. You can't. I already have," Vanessa cut him off. 9 minutes. That's how long it took for you to disgrace my family's name. 9 minutes, and you forgot who pays your salaries. 9 minutes, and you revealed the truth of what prejudice looks like in 2024. And now, 9 minutes later, justice has arrived. The crowd erupted, some in cheers, some in stunned silence. Guests who had been complicit with their quiet stares now clapped, their guilt dissolving into solidarity. The elder in the fedora raised his cane high. Glory, glory. I live to see the day when the chains break in front of my eyes. Vanessa's voice softened, though it carried farther than ever before. But understand this, it's not just about firing staff. It's about reform. It's about ensuring that this hotel, and every hotel under the Carter Group, becomes a place where dignity is not a privilege, but a right. Effective tomorrow, every single employee will undergo civil rights and cultural sensitivity training. Every complaint of discrimination will be investigated, not ignored. And every guest, regardless of race, wealth, or background, will be treated with respect. Phones shook as the live stream chat exploded. She's a queen. She's a legend. This is history. Vanessa turned slowly, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. To those watching at home, to those who have ever been silenced, belittled, or cast aside, I want you to hear me now. You are not invisible. You are not powerless. One voice can lift generations. One stand can shift the tide. Tonight, this is not just my victory. It belongs to all of us. The teenage girl with red ribbons wiped her tears, her voice trembling as she whispered into her phone, "This is bigger than viral. This is movement." The gospel chorus rose again, "We shall overcome," this time louder, stronger, unstoppable. Vanessa closed her eyes, letting the harmony wash over her like a baptism of justice. She thought of her grandmother scrubbing hotel floors. She thought of her father signing the deed that changed their family's destiny. She thought of every ancestor who had endured humiliation with quiet strength so she could stand here tonight, not just to endure, but to triumph. When the song ended, she gave one final, unforgettable line. "You tried to throw me out of my own house. But tonight, I opened the doors for everyone who was ever told they didn't belong. This hotel is ours now, the people's. And it will stand as a monument to justice, for generations to come." The chandelier flickered, the live stream ticked past 200,000 viewers, and the Carter Hotel lobby erupted, not with scandal, but with history. Because in just 9 minutes, humiliation had turned into revolution.